Welcome to the Family Brand Show. We're Chris and Melissa Smith of FamilyBrand.com, husband and wife, parents of 5, and we want to help you take back your family and to live life on your terms.
And we know being a family can feel really overwhelming. Parents tell us they feel like they're being pulled in a million different directions. It's so challenging to navigate the uncertainty and all the chaos that's happening in the world right now.
And that's why we want to bring you every single week actionable tips and strategies that you can implement in your daily life to become a better parent, to become a better spouse, and to build a stronger family. And look, there's never been a better time and a more important time than right now to take back your family. You can define what your family stands for, or the world is going to do it for you. And the world needs strong families now more than ever. And it starts right here with your family.
What is up? Before we jump in today, I wanted to invite you all to our Family Brand Blitz that we're having in November 7th and 8th in Gilbert, Arizona. It's the first in-person workshop like this we've done since 2021. So we don't do them very often, but when we have done it before, it's been super impactful. We have couples signing up, and one thing that we do is we send out, as the day gets a little bit closer, anyone that's part of it, we gather information on these couples and these families so you can start to get to know each other before the event kicks off. So I'm looking forward to that, and it would be fun to have you on our get to know you sheet. We have some incredible couples that are already attending, and we would love you to be one of them. So check that out. I'll put the link in the show notes, or go to familybrand.com/retreats.
Familybrand.com/retreats. However, you can click up at the top on the tab, you can click events.
Yep. And reach out if you have any questions. If there's something not addressed, on the webpage and you have some questions, shoot me an email to melissa@familybrand.com. Love to have a conversation with you. The other thing that happened last week is there was a woman that was really excited to attend. She couldn't quite get her husband on board, so we had like a 15-minute call, and then he was like, "Oh, I get it. Like, this sounds really cool. This sounds really important." But she was having trouble having that conversation with him, like, by herself. So I'd be happy to jump on a call with you too. So reach out, melissa@familybrand.com.
It's where the cool kids, the cool parents will be hanging out November 7th and 8th.
Yep. Okay, so today what we want to talk about is I had someone, Brittany, my lovely and beautiful assistant. She will periodically, she will say, "Hey, could you record an episode about this or about that?" She'll have different ideas. And I love when people share ideas, because it's like, okay, this is where people are maybe really struggling with, or where people are really asking questions. It's always good to know where people are at. So this is inspired by you, Brittany. Thank you. She's training for a marathon right now too. So there's Brittany. If you're listening to this on your long run, thank you for inspiring this episode. So her thought was basically, she's like, I see Chris, and he has a business, and he has, things that he's pursuing, and you do too. It's like, how do you guys support each other in your different pursuits and your different goals as husband and wife? Like, sometimes it can be a tricky balance. And so that's kind of a jumping off point for our conversation today, is how can you as spouses support one another?
Yeah, and when Melissa shared this idea with me of this for an episode, I really liked it. And as I thought about it, it's, to me, I'll just share how it occurs for me. It hasn't always occurred for me this way, but how it occurs for me now and how I think about it is that it's not just, I want to support Melissa in whatever that means as a wife, mother, human being, and her goals, her interests. Not just like I want to. I actually believe that by being her husband and being a committed relationship with her, that's actually part of the commitment that I have, and part of the responsibility I have as her husband is to support her. And I think that if husbands and wives and significant others looked at it that way, like, part of my responsibility in this relationship is to show up for them, is to speak possibility to them, is to support them and breathe life into their dreams. Because I can tell you, for many years in our marriage, that didn't occur to me at all. Not only did the thought not occur to me, it probably would, if someone would have said that, I'd probably be like, no, that's not my responsibility. Like, it's Melissa's responsibility to go after the things she wants, or ask for help and ask for support. And certainly, yes, all of us are 100% responsible for our lives. But I truly do believe now, totally, that yes, Melissa's responsible for her life and can create whatever she wants in her life. And I have a responsibility to speak possibility into her, to breathe life into her dreams, to support her whether she asked for it or not. And so I think that's just been an epiphany that's even been cool to have, even just thinking about this episode.
And honestly, it looks different at every stage of life. Like the way that we're supporting each other right now looks much different than it did when, before we hit record, I was talking to Chris about when, we had 5 kids that were like 9 and under. Support for me at that time looked different than support for me does now. And that's a cool journey of marriage too. Just seeing like, oh, it's always changing. It's always evolving. Your relationship is, and it's just when you have it figured out, you realize like, oh, we have to refigure it out again. And what does the world look like in this phase of marriage? I think that's I won't say it's fun because it's challenging because it is always like a balance and figuring things out. But I think it's a worthy pursuit, like you're saying.
Yeah, you'll hear couples talk about this a lot. And maybe you've experienced this where it's like, I supported my husband while he was going through college, for example, or dental school or whatever it was. And I worked and I supported us that way. But that felt like that was how I could contribute in that way, in that season of our life, or vice versa. It's like I supported my wife while she was going through school and I worked so she could go to school. Or it's like I stayed home with the kids so that, the husband or wife, whoever could pursue a secondary education. Sometimes there's a season of your life where like you're newlyweds and you don't have any kids. So it's like, well, how do we support each other in just maybe getting our lives established or getting our careers going or going to college, whatever that looks like. And then, like you said, I don't want to be overgeneralized, but I say like as husband and wife, supporting each other when you're just getting your family established or your lives established, I would say. Then there's supporting each other like when you have little kids, which I think at that time, Melissa might have been like, yeah, support for me would be like, help me more with like bedtime routines or like, hey, I'm peacing out tonight. Put all the kids to bed and like handle dinner, and I wished in hindsight, I felt like I got better over time, but I could have been more proactive in just thinking about how could I support Melissa at this stage of life. And then maybe as your kids get a little bit older, start getting a lot into activities and sports. You're supporting each other by like, okay, like maybe I'll take the kids to practices these days and you take them to practices these days. And then I think at the stage we're at now, I'm just kind of going through the different stages, try not to overgeneralize them too much. Our youngest is 8. Our children are very like independent, self-sufficient to a degree, but like we're not dealing with like newborns and toddlers.
They still need to be fed like every day.
Yeah.
And that's
oddly enough, unfortunately. And so now it's a stage, it's like, I feel like Melissa and I both have more freedom and capacity to pursue maybe more dreams and interests in our businesses and also hobbies than maybe we did when our kids were really little. And it's like, so now how do we support each other at this season? And so I do think it is important to think about it in seasons. And I would say though, regardless of the season you're in, I'm telling you from personal experience, I wished that I would have more intentionally and consciously thought at all of those stages and seasons of life, how can I support Melissa? How can I show up for her? How can I speak and breathe life into her and her dreams? Just a handful of questions like, how can I breathe life into her and her dreams? How can I speak possibility into her and encourage her? And just how can I support her? And then occasionally there are those also like, how can I challenge him or her? Like, how do I push them a little bit?
Which I think we can talk more about that in a minute. Before we jump there though, I think too, looking back at some of those earlier phases that you mentioned, I feel like I didn't ask for help either. And I feel like I could have done better at asking for more support. And even like recently, we were just talking about this last night, but
Just thinking about our conversation last night, just funny occurred to me, like it's just some of the things we said. Anyways, keep going.
the way there's like so many different things that we can talk about right now. I'm going to make a note. We jump back to this. So at this phase in our marriage, we've kind of assigned each other 2 different roles in our family. Chris is taking the CFO role and I'm taking the CEO role. And as the CEO of our family, that in the afternoon looks like a lot of driving, a lot of taking the kids places to their various activities. Our 2 oldest can drive, but that still leaves 3 of them that need rides. And we were just talking last night. Because I've taken on the CEO role, I still feel bad asking Chris to help with rides, like in the evening, even though it's, work time is over and I'm like, but I'm the CEO and I should be able to do this, and don't need to ask for help, or like, or the opposite. If I'm being very authentic, I'm like, I shouldn't have to ask for help. Chris should know that she needs picked up at 5:30. If we're 2 months into the season, like, how does he not know? But that's just me, like, putting these expectations on him and being unwilling to like communicate and ask for help, really.
And I think what part of what brought this up is yesterday, Melissa was like, hey, what would look like support for me is I want to go to this yoga class at 4:30. Can you take this particular child to a practice and then go pick? I was like, yeah, easy. And I think she was like, oh, I could just ask more often.
Yeah.
And I could be more aware, like, right? So, and that's another thing in this is just like, I think what we used to do a lot to each other too in the beginning was like, well, I shouldn't have to ask for your help or support. You should know how to support me. And that's just really dangerous. We've talked about this on the podcast before, to operate from these shoulds or shouldn'ts. And I think we've gotten better at, in this idea of supporting each other, I think we've gotten a lot better at not just complaining and then hoping something changes, but just coming and saying, hey, authentically, like, I would love some help or support. And like, could you support me in this way? And just asking for what you want. Whereas I think we used to maybe dedicate more energy to complaining about what we didn't want or what wasn't happening.
I think recently also, I hope this doesn't come off as like, this is just like, I feel like a really authentic and real episode. Current conversations that we're having about on what does support look like. Because there was also a day recently where it was on the weekend and I was just feeling like I cannot make another meal for another person. And I pulled Chris aside and I was like, I'm feeling very burned out. I cannot make another meal.
I'm this close to losing it.
And so Chris stepped in and he was happy I would help. But I thought that I saw growth in myself, where I feel like usually I might have just like let that continue to like fester and build, and then I might have gotten like upset. I was able to catch it enough ahead of time to be like, wow, I'm feeling really overstimulated. Can you help me out with this, Chris?
Yeah.
Before I lose it.
And I'll, authentically, I'll share last night. What had me laugh is I team rope. If for those of you who don't, know what that is, it's a rodeo event. So I rope and I rodeo and I really love it. And I'm getting ready to go compete in a couple of days. So I've been practicing a little bit more, maybe more often than I usually do. And Melissa's been super awesome about it. I've gone a couple times really early in the morning, which is pretty easy because by the time I get home, most people are just getting out of bed. But it can be challenging when I go in the afternoons or evenings. And that used to be a pretty big source of, I would say, contention for Melissa and I at different seasons of just like my roping. And I did admittedly do too much of it and wasn't considerate enough.
If I may add, it was just different though too, because when our kids were younger, you going and roping was like, very like physically demanding for me. Like it was just like, I'm doing bedtime, I'm doing dinner, I'm doing like all of it on my own. And that, I feel like that was hard.
Yeah. And I would say, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I think something you've realized and you've told me has like been an evolution in your growth is you've also found it to be useful. I think Melissa used to spend more time talking, well, let's just say authentically. I think Melissa used to spend more time complaining about what I did than putting energy into what she wanted to do. And I think you've gotten way better at that. It's like, well, I'm not going to complain about what Chris is doing. I'm also going to go do things like, and we got to talk and communicate, be in alignment. Like I can't just dominate the time or you either. So Melissa's, I think you've gotten way better at just being like, yeah, well, here's what I'm going to do. And here's what's important to me. And could you support me in that? And yeah, sure. And so.
Which last night, Chris, this is actually how the conversation started.
That's what I was going to say.
No, you.
I got done saying my prayers and I was just like grateful for Melissa. And all of a sudden I just said, hey, Melissa, can I just tell you something that I'm really grateful for? And just, I really want to acknowledge you. She's like, yeah, this is just how it came. This is how it occurred to me. So this is how it came out. I was like, I'm just really grateful that you just leave me alone about my roping. And she started laughing and I started laughing. And I was like, no, but seriously, like, I'm just grateful that you just let me go do it. And I'm sure there's times where it's like, you don't really love it or he doesn't, but oh my gosh, it's just like, yeah, thanks for just leaving me alone and letting me rope. And also you can say something. And it actually led to us having a conversation of around, yes, I am very happy for you to rope. And I also still have these things I want to do. And how can we get even more on the same page? And yeah, it's just funny, but I think it's an evolution of like, I do think there is some wisdom in support each other. And this might sound really weird, but to us, also at the same time, like leave each other alone also to a certain degree. Like, I think we both used to spend so much time just worrying about what the other person was doing or like what I'm not getting to do, you know, and I think there's just more energy in like, hey, how can we support each other? And then also how can we like do things that are important and meaningful to us? And either I'm putting more energy into what I want to create or I'm putting more energy into like what's not happening.
Yeah. And I think for me, now that, as I mentioned, the kids are a little bit older, it's not just so hard. I can see, but it does still mean, like recently when you grow up, it does still mean like I'm handling dinner, handling the rides. But I do see how much Chris loves it. And I do see like you come back just like super happy. And you talk about how, you know, when you're on your horse, it's like, I forget how you've worded it, but you, excuse me, you've said before, like, I feel like God speaks to me when I'm on my horse. And so I feel like, I don't know, I'm getting emotional about this. But I'm like, why would I want to deny you of that thing that you love? Even though it's not like a thing that I love and that I'm like passionate about, you do love it. And I want you to do things that you love, like inside of our marriage. So it does feel like a sacrifice. But then I think the other thing too is realizing like I don't have to keep track of like I maybe used to feel like, okay, Chris went out and roped 3 times this week. So I want to go out 3 times this week. That's an over exaggeration, like, yeah. But realizing instead of just nagging you about what you're doing, just realizing like me getting clear, well, what do I want to do? And you're more than willing to support me in it, but it does require me to get clear on what I want and plan ahead, communicate ahead with you, which is the part that usually wasn't happening, but it was my own day call.
Thanks, Melissa. And people listening to this are probably like, wow, good one, Chris. Use the whole God speaks to me on a horse. So then it's like, how could she say no? Yeah, I just get my greatest inspirations in life. It's like, people are probably like, he's a lie. He's making all that up just to go rope.
No, and you've always loved roping our entire marriage. It's not like.
I do love it. I really do love it. Yeah.
And I think it's good for a person to be outside. And lately, our 8-year-old has liked going with Chris too. So I think that's been a fun thing that you guys have done.
I've also found in that, like, this is interesting. I'm going to ask Melissa this. Do you experience me as someone, like you said this, but like, do you experience me as someone who's more than willing to support you when you do want to go do things? Like if you wanted to go out one night or go on a weekend or like, or if you're like, hey, can you handle dinner tonight? Like, do you experience me more often than not, like being pretty willing?
Yeah. I think this is another like interesting thing that I think women sometimes battle. I don't think battle's the best word, but you do it in a different way than I would do it though. Like if you say, I'll handle dinner, sometimes that usually looks like I'm going to go buy dinner and I'm going to bring it home. And sometimes I feel like I want to be like, but no, like I want you to make dinner for the family. Like, because that's what I would do. But I've also learned that I got to like let go of that too and be like, you know, if he wants to handle dinner and, you know,
That's how I make dinner.
that's how he makes dinner, I'm off the hook either way. Like, it's all good.
So, and the reason I'm asking that is I was about to say, like, I occur for myself as someone who's very willing, but then I was like, I better ask Melissa first. Because I occur for myself as like, I can't remember a time in our marriage where you've come to me and been like, hey, I want to do this thing. I want to go on this girls' night. I want to go on this trip. I want to like, or like whatever it is, and me being like, no. Because I actually think I value so much being able to like go and do things I want. I want that for you too. And I'm just telling you right now, publicly, you could get way more out of me if you'd ask for it more.
Tempting.
Because I'm just realizing like, yeah, and again, now there could be the argument that could be made and like, people could be like, well, then why don't you jerk, you know, you a-hole, just do it and offer it. And it's like, I do when it occurs to me. So it's not like I'm like, oh, I would do way more, but if she's not going to ask, I'm not going to. But what's occurring to me right now is like, yeah, like if you wanted more nights, like you talked about taking classes at the college, and so I guess what I'm saying is maybe as a thought, it's like, I think more husbands and wives could probably like get more out of each other, and not like a taking advantage, just like support if they just asked for it. But I think that's so hard to do. And I think we really make up these really dangerous, like, well, you should just know. And I've done that the opposite way, like even around things like intimacy, right? Like, because that could be a way, you know, potentially like husbands and wives could say like, well, support and like showing up for me. And like, and there's been plenty of times like, you know, throughout our marriage, I was like, well, I want Melissa to initiate intimacy more, and she should just know. Like, why should I have to tell her? Like, if she, you know, it's like, I can think even like around intimacy, time, meals, picking up kids, no matter who's doing it. I think it's so dangerous to make these assumptions around, well, they should just want to support me. They should just know how to support me, and they should just do it. It's like, I don't know. That's a recipe to me for like unhappiness, resentment, and you actually won't get the support. It'd be better just to like, now, I do think there's a different conversation if you're asking for the support and never receiving it, right? So I think there's an element of communication that I didn't plan on talking about this today that I think we've gotten way better at, just being like, hey, if I make another meal today, I'm going to lose it. So will you say I step in? Like, yeah, tag me in. I got it, you know? And I've come to you before and be like, hey, I could really use some support around this. And you're like, yeah.
And it's a little off topic, but not entirely. There was this one day recently, it was this year sometime, where Chris was just a little bit maybe more on edge than he had been.
Probably angry.
Well, come to find out, I can't remember we talked about this. I'm looking at the energy drink that he has on his desk. He realized that
I was over-caffeinating myself.
Caffeinating himself. But I remember you coming to me a couple times and being like, I'm feeling stressed, which you hardly ever do. But it was funny because...
Yeah, like I mostly drink Clean Simple Eats energy drinks. That's what I try to drink because they're clean, and I like a little bit of caffeine. But I got this this amino acid drink, just branched chain amino acids. It's pretty healthy, and I would sip on it throughout the day. For like a week there, I was like, Melissa, I'm gonna lose my mind. Like, I'm getting so anxious and jittery in the afternoon. She's like, and I went and looked. It had 200 grams of caffeine in it. So I was like, I was about to OD on caffeine.
It's so funny. He was, he was communicating to me that he was anxious, but the reason why was because he was.
Are you saying in the context, was I asking you like, just, hey, I could use some support? Like, I'm just feeling a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm feeling anxious. Like,
I also want to talk about in this episode, I want to make sure that we don't miss, like, I think part of like showing up for your spouse and support sometimes looks like challenge too, and pushing them.
I'm going to circle back to that.
And some of you heard me tell the story before, but you know, years ago when I had really wanted to do my own thing for a long time. I really had, and I knew it, but I just didn't quite have the courage to like fully commit to it. But what was interesting is I would do like commissioned only sales jobs. So I had enough confidence to go out and provide and produce and create. I just didn't have quite enough confidence or belief maybe to like do my own thing. And that was when Melissa and I lived on this street that we absolutely loved, Claxton Street, and it was a cul-de-sac. And so we just walk up and down the street almost every night, go on walks. And I'd been complaining to Melissa for a series of nights about just trying to do things for other people and trying to sell for other people. And finally, Melissa, I think, was probably...
Not even a series of nights. This was like years.
But maybe... I remember like being really intense though, like some pretty big decisions. And I think Melissa was probably sick and tired of hearing it, rightfully so. And then B, probably felt inspired. And she just goes, we're walking, and she just goes, Chris, when are you going to stop chasing other people's dreams and start building your own? And I was like just hit me. And I didn't want to admit she was right. So I just didn't say anything. In my mind, immediately I just switched and I was like, I'm going to do my own thing. And then interestingly enough, just like I think how God or the universe works, whatever you want to call it, like around your commitment, the next week I get the most insane job offer I've ever had. And this is a time where we could really use the money, like a big salary with huge bonuses, benefits, like all this in alignment with my gifts and talents, I felt like, and I would love doing it. And I was like, no, I'm doing my own thing. And Melissa was like super supportive. So once she challenged me and pushed me and kind of called me out. But then even when she saw the job opportunity, which I still think to this day, sometimes I'm like, that was so irresponsible of you, Melissa, to believe in me at that stage. You should have made me get the job. But I'm grateful she didn't. So not only did she challenge me, but she's like, yeah, go do your own thing. I believe in you. And Melissa's always believed in me. She's always like, spoken possibility in life into me and told me how amazing she thinks I am. And so, but it was very much like, called me out and challenged me. And then I hope that there's been times where, I've tried to get well. And then again, one night, again, in the spirit of communication, if you're going to support each other, you got to communicate. Like, it's so dangerous to just expect support, like communicate, One night, Melissa goes, like, years later, she was like, hey, can I just be authentic and honest with you? And I was like, yeah. She goes, I feel like we have spent so much time and energy and money over the last few years helping you pursue your dream and develop your identity. And like, because I'd hired lots of coaches in that time. And she goes, and it's been amazing. And it's created a lot of like opportunities for our family. And by this time my business was becoming more successful. She's like, so I love all of that. And I want the same thing for me. I want to like figure out my identity even more and like what I feel called to do. And I was like, holy cow. So first I felt guilty because I was like, man, I wished I would have thought of that before you had to come to me. And I'm grateful you came to me. And I think Melissa has learned you got to be careful when you tell me things because I'm just going to go start making it happen.
You just go. Yeah.
Like tomorrow. And sometimes people are like, dude, I'm not like you. Like, I don't like hold the horses a little bit.
I need to think about it for 5 more years.
Yeah.
And then I'll be ready.
And so that became like a really driving focus of mine of like, ooh, I want to help support Melissa and her identity. So I would just listen to her say things. And she mentioned one time, like, I'm kind of interested in real estate. So I immediately connected with this real estate investor that I thought Melissa would connect with. And I'm like, hey, do you mentor people? And she's like, yeah. And so I had learned at that point in time, I couldn't just be like, hey, Melissa, here's what you're going to do. I kind of like float the idea over to her. But I think that made a meaningful difference.
Totally.
And Melissa's done really well with real estate investing and owns some properties. And so that was me though, trying to like, how can I show up for her? How can I push her? How can I like make some resources? And so I think we've learned to be, to also be better about that.
Totally. The one last thing that I think we could address right now is there's been times in our marriage where you've like traveled a lot for work. And I feel like lately you've traveled a bit more than you have, in years past. I think that could be kind of part of this conversation too, like just at a practical level, like what does support look like, if one person is traveling or just really busy?
I will say, yeah, like the first year I started my business actually. So the first year I started my business and we're like, okay, it looks like it's going to work. Like we're going to be able to like make it. So that was the first year.
Yeah.
And then towards the end of that first year, I was starting to see like, man, if I really push hard this next year, I think I could like really, really establish this business. And I kind of got a sense of what would be required of me in the form of like travel and work hours. And it was going to be a lot. And it just so happened at that time that we had a lot of goals. So we'd set like, there's a home we want to buy. We'd identify the house. We're going to want to remodel it. There's some trips we want to do. And I think one of the most wise things that we ever did, and I don't even know how we thought of this, is we sat down as a family. Our kids were little, but we had them be part of it. We're like, okay, guys, dad has his own business now. We have all of these things we want to do. And we'd created these things together as a family. So it wasn't just me or it wasn't just Melissa or just us. It was all of us. We said, we believe that we could make all this happen in the next year. And in order to do that, here's what would be required of dad. And we didn't have a perfect picture of it. We had some sense of I'd be maybe gone more often, longer work hours. Do we want to make that trade-off? Or do we want to have dad work less, but also like that might impact some of these goals we have or, how fast we can create them. And we came together as a family. We agreed. Everyone was like, shift that off, get him out of here. Like, put this guy to work. We got some stuff to buy.
The kids wanted a playground that year. I do remember that was one of the things on the list.
And so again, communication, I'm just realizing even in this episode, like how foundational, like you cannot really be fully supporting each other and challenging each other if you're not communicating. And so we got really clear together what we wanted. And then we talked about, okay, well, here's what support looks like from my end. Here's what support looks like from Melissa's end, from the family's end. And there were times in that year it was challenging. There was times in that year where Melissa was like, gosh, dang, like I'm exhausted. I'm home a lot. I'm home alone a lot with the kids. But I think it was helpful for you to be able to draw back on, but I chose this. And this is why I chose it, because of this is what we're going to create. Yeah. Same thing for me. There were times where I was like, I did not really get on another airplane. I mean, there were times where I would land in Phoenix stay at the airport for an hour and get on another plane and fly out of Phoenix and not even go to Gilbert to see my family. I flew like 80 something times that year. If you just do the math on that, it was crazy. And there was times I was missing my family terribly. And I'd be like, but this is how I'm supporting our family. And this was important to us. And this was like, and then there was times where our kids were like, man, Dad, I wish you weren't. I knew I was traveling a lot when, you know how fun it is to, when you're a little kid, to go to the airport, pick up your parents or pick up a family member. I knew when I was traveling too much is one day Melissa goes, all right, guys, get in the car. We're going to be Dad. And Tanner at the time, he's really little. He's like, just tell him to take an Uber. They were so tired of going to the airport. It was not cool anymore.
It had lost its the allure. Okay.
And so again, I think communication, it's like, man, are we aligned in this? Like at this, but I think, yeah, this season of my life, hey, there's some travel coming up and like, how can we support each other in that? And I just think you're going to be so much more able and willing to support each other. And this might sound so obvious, but I can't support Melissa in achieving something if I don't know what it is. And she can't be supported in achieving something if she doesn't know what it is. Mm-hmm. And so I think there is a real usefulness at every season of your life to be a bit, I don't think it's selfish, but it might occur, be a bit selfish and be like, okay, what do I want at this season of my life? What would support look like to me? And how do I communicate that? So let's say you're brand new newlyweds at that season. Okay. What would support look like to me? How do I communicate that to my spouse? You have little kids. Okay. What's important to me? Right? Like, what do I want to like, and what would support look like to me? Communicate that. And I think just continuing in at every season, I think what you want is going to change. So the support required would change.
Yeah. And there's phases we're not even in yet. You know, the empty nester phase, you've had a guest on here before, is that's a really challenging phase for a couple because you're reinventing yourselves again. And so I think you're right. That's a question like, what do we look like at this phase? How can we support each other at this phase? Because it's going to keep changing. One last thing I wanted to add that occurred to me as you were talking is I feel like when you're talking about communication and how that is so important when you're supporting each other is date night. I feel like that has, over the course of all of those phases of life that we have been talking about, you and I having an intention to have a date night every week, I think is super helpful to keep that communication open. Totally. And we're not having like super deep conversations, you know, all the time at those date nights. But I think that keeps you and I connected and, you know, our marriage at the forefront of all of our busy schedule and our busy lives.
Yeah, I think another word that we're talking about here is like, you know, you hear it talked about like in the scriptures, like equally yoked. I also like the idea of like being in alignment, because I think anytime we get out of alignment, whether with ourselves or with our significant other or just as a family, everything feels hard, it feels difficult and heavy, and it just seems like life doesn't work. And when you're in alignment, it just kind of feels like you're in flow and it's a little bit smoother and it works. And here's my theory now on alignment. I used to kind of think, well, you get in alignment, you just stay perfectly in alignment, then you get out of alignment, and then you got to do the work to come back in. I actually think alignment is more like this straight line, and we just see how often we can cross over it. And sometimes we go really, really wide, and it takes us a while to come back, and sometimes we can just cross over it quite a bit, quite often. But I think the more that you can be in alignment with your significant other around, okay, what do you want at this season of your life? What's important to you? Okay, awesome. What would support look like for you? Okay, great. Here's what I want at this season of my life. And then, you know, same, and here's what we want as a family, and how can we support each other? And it sounds so cliche, but it really is like one of the greatest challenges of families is we just don't talk enough. We don't communicate enough. Same thing in companies that we consult with, the possibility companies. Like there's just like, I love the George Bernard Shaw quote, the single greatest challenge with communication is the illusion that has taken place. You know, it's like, no, I complained to my wife 2 weeks ago about something. She hasn't done anything. It's like, well, that's not communication. You know, it's like, and I will say, I'm such a huge believer in this from hard lessons. Don't complain to each other about what you don't like about each other and what you don't like about the lack of support. Instead, use your energy to talk about what you do want from each other and what support could look like. And I'm not saying you don't ever talk about challenging things. It's like, address it. Like, hey, lately it seems like this is happening. But once it's been addressed, move on. Move into, okay, so what do we want to create here? What would support look like? And I just think that keeps you in a more energy of like creation and possibility than than complaining.
We were very chatty today. Usually, we find that most of our listeners are busy parents, and we try and keep these episodes 20 to 30 minutes. And here we are, just chatting
Catching
it
up
up
on
today.
40. Thanks for listening.
We love doing a live with you, our Family Brand podcast listeners, and I hope that if this helps you wherever you're at, support each other better.
All right. So that is it for today's episode of the Family Brand Podcast.
But before you go, we have something fun for you.
Yeah. Like if you've ever wondered, okay, so how's our family culture actually doing? We've got an incredible quiz for that.
Good news, it's quick, it's free, and when you're done with that quiz, we'll even email you this awesome PDF full of practical ways to strengthen your family culture right away.
So all you have to do is go to familybrand.com/quiz, take the quiz, grab the PDF.
We'll see you next time.